Council today. We have Councilmember Newell, Councilmember Harrison, Councilmember Freeman, Councilmember Stallings, and Councilmember Lockhart. We welcome all of you. We're glad you're here. Glad for all of our staff who is with us today and all of our residents who are here today too to participate. I've asked Councilmember Newell if she'll offer an invocation.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful we're able to be here together today as a council and be able to work together for this great city of Lehi that we live in. Heavenly Father, we ask at this time to bless our residents with a special blessing on our first responders and our public safety, that they can be kept safe from harm and be able to have thy guidance and inspiration with them as they keep us safe and keep our city, the amazing city that we all love to live in. Please be with us today as we counsel with each other, that we can listen and have an empathetic heart and be able to listen to our residents and make decisions that would have the best impact on our city. Again, Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for this opportunity that we have, and we say these things in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Our first item of business, number 2.1, is the annual audit report from the Finance Department. So we'll turn some time over to Dean.
Yeah, so every year we have an audit, and Dana has come here many times, but most of you don't know her because you're new. So I'm going to introduce Dana Howell. She's with Osborne, Robbins, Bueller, and she's been our auditor for a little while, and she does a great job for us. And more important, she may be the #1 Seahawks fan in the state of Utah. So.
Number 2. Oh my gosh, what a fun weekend. Yes?
Oh, my boys just went to the game on Sunday.
So cool.
They love the Seahawks.
I might have been on their plane. There were definitely a few people on the plane. So
Let's go.
It was so much fun. I'll try to. I didn't wear a jersey. I figured I'd try and be a little bit professional. A little. So you guys have received a lot of information, I know, and if you're new to this, it's probably like, what in the world? So I was told to come give you a quiz. Not really. The first thing I wanted to do is point out in this big book, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, on page 14, it is our report on the financial statements. And it's long, but basically what it's saying is that we've audited the financial statements and that we have concluded that they're materially correct in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That just means we're looking for the proper accounting treatment of things and such. It does not mean that we're testing internal controls. We're not issuing any kind of a report on internal controls. It's not designed to search out or find fraud or illegal acts or things like that. We're really just doing tests to make sure that the financial statements are accurate in accordance with what we call GAAP. And we were. It's a clean opinion. There's no findings in that opinion. Like I say, it's on page 14, and it goes over to page 16. And then the next section of this document, it's called Management's Discussion and Analysis, and it just has a lot of summary financial information. It has summarized financial statements, and then also just some bullet points that you can look at for different things that are kind of high points that we pulled out. Those highlights are on page 17, and I don't know if we want to read any of them in particular, or if you have, maybe I could just pause, and if you have any questions at this point, or we could go over more detail, whatever any of you think.
So I haven't read through the whole thing yet. I'm about halfway through, and I did notice that there was like a finding of sort, but it wasn't major.
Okay, that might be in the other report.
The other reports,
yeah.
okay.
So maybe we could move on from the financial statements. I mean, and there's nothing. I guess the only other thing I would mention in the financial statements, there's a lot of detail, and it's kind of interesting to report to you in January when these are as of June 30th. So it's kind of old news, right? You know, if there was some budget problem or some cash flow problem or something, it would be long addressed. And so the only other thing I would mention in here is that there were no variances, there was no expenditures in excess of budget that you would see in these financial statements. That would actually get reported on elsewhere too in these other reports, but that's just one other thing I thought I would mention. So to address your question, we have a packet here. It looks like this. It's the single audit packet. And this has to do with when you get federal funds over you spend federal funds over $750,000, we have to report to the federal government and do what they call a single audit. And they call it a single audit because you do it kind of at the same time you're doing the financial audit. And basically what we have to do is we have to go through several steps and figure out what your major programs are, so the programs that you spent the most money on. The last several years, all of that has related to COVID money, when they just started throwing COVID money at you guys to be able to spend away. And so the biggest programs for that were the pressurized irrigation meter installation, and then also, it's escaping me, the well? Yeah, the flight park well. The flight park well. So we had to do testing on those projects, and we have certain things we have to do, checklists and whatnot to do. So we do all that, and as part of a government audit, there's this single audit, and we issue reports on that. We had no findings on that at all this year, as far as specifically related to the federal grants. But on a more general level, on page 1 of this single audit package, we do a report on internal control over financial reporting. And in connection with that, it just describes what we do, the responsibilities we have for learning about your internal controls and for making sure we can see that they're in place. But again, we're not testing them. We don't opine on them at all. And then we also do the same kind of thing for compliance. And so compliance with these federal grants and also compliance with a bunch of state matters, which we can go into in a minute. With regard to the internal control over financial reporting, we did write up a finding that we referred to on page, let's see. Sorry, I should have had that. So it's actually on page 9. It's the next to the last page. And we refer to it as a significant deficiency in internal control, but that sounds so much worse than it really is. It's just professional language that we are required to refer to. And what happened is we ended up with quite a few audit adjustments. So at the beginning of the audit, the finance department gives us what we call a trial balance. It's basically the financial statements in unadjusted format. And as we go through and do our thing, we will find adjustments. And we always know we're going to find adjustments because a lot of it is really kind of work in process as we get going on the audit. This year, we just happened to have some that were larger, and based on some calculations we do in our work and these professional standards and how they dictate what we have to report on, some of the adjustments exceeded a threshold where we had to report on it this way. It's not abnormal. It's not like there's some big breakdown in internal control or anything. So I don't know if you have any other specific questions, but that's basically the gist of it, just kind of year-end close. And I mean, I guess I would elaborate a little more. All of the adjustments relate to timing issues, like when is payroll recorded, the last payroll of the year, is it recorded in fiscal year 2025 or did it get pushed into 2026? We might have to shift it around. Or inventory, same way with the PI meters. Maybe they got counted, everything was there was nothing missing. Did it get counted in the financial statements as inventory or as work in process in that project? You know, it's really just timing and kind of where it's recognized in the financial statements. It's not like there was all of a sudden, you know, anything missing or any real errors in terms of we can't figure out something or whatever. So it sounds not great, but it's really just not a big deal. It's very normal. So that's pretty much where I would put it. But if you have questions, fire away. No?
That answers mine.
Okay. So that's basically the single audit. That's this single audit package. And also in connection with this gets combined with the big comprehensive annual financial report in a digital format and gets submitted electronically to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. And so that's how it all gets reported to the federal government. And that's just all done and caught up and everything's completed for this fiscal year. I mentioned briefly the state compliance. There's a shorter letter. It might have a header. I can't remember what yours looks like, but it's a letter about state compliance. And the city is subject to, we get an audit guide from the state auditor's office saying, test this, that, and the other thing to make sure the city's in compliance. And so we did that. And this year we had to test your budgetary compliance. Like I say, there's nothing over budget. We test fund balance things, the justice court, some controls and things like that on them. We look at restricted taxes and some revenues. I think you guys wouldn't have seen the fraud risk assessment yet, but there's a checklist kind of thing that Dean goes through with everybody at the end of the year about risks and how the city is addressing them. Do you want to explain that a little?
Yeah, so we do that every year, but we do it in June. So we did it last June, and we'll do it this June with this council for that year.
And so you're in compliance with that. That's just one of the things we had to look at. And then also some information about fees. And in all of those things, we had no findings. Everything was great. So really, there's nothing to really share or report on that unless you do have any questions. I'll pause on that one. No? Okay. And then the last letter I have to share, it's just a basic letter. We call it Letter to Those Charged with Governance, which is you guys. And it's really just this boilerplate letter. We have to communicate about certain things. The first part is about accounting policies. There were no new accounting policies adopted for this year. Well, no, there was one. There was a change in how we had to account for compensated absences, meaning PTO and time off. There wasn't a significant effect on the financial statements on that. And then there's just some other things, like if we had had any difficulties encountered in the audit, we would report it, but we didn't. We do mention that we made adjustments, but that management's posted all of them. They've approved them. We didn't have any disagreements. There were just really nothing else to report. It's very boilerplate. The other audit findings and issues does refer to the single audit letter that we just discussed, talking about the adjustments that we made as part of the audit. So really it's pretty dull, and dull is good. So, that's really all I have, unless you want me to tear into anything in more detail. Okay.
Any other questions? Council's good.
I would pause one sec, because I should say that it's really a pleasure to work with these guys. You don't know it yet. A lot of you don't know it yet, but Dean and Karma and Allison are fantastic. It's like the great gift of clients. Not all clients are made the same. And these guys are awesome. So it's really just a privilege for us to work with everybody here, and everybody's so cooperative and helpful. It's really awesome.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Dean, any closing comments after that?
No, we appreciate working with them. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to 2.2, presentation of citizen survival results, the Y2 analytics.
For about 10 years now, we've been partnered with Y2 Analytics to conduct a citizen survey annually. That went out this January, and so Kyrene here she's going to give us our results and kind of walk us through what that looks like.
All right, and assuming technology is still cooperating with us. Oh no. Let me try again. Okay, great. I love it when things work. All right, so as Mariah mentioned, we've been conducting this resident survey for several years now. We have some of the data illustrated over time in this presentation, just the last 5 years for ease of legibility, frankly. But digging in with a few initial findings first, and sort of the highlights here. Overall, we find that residents are quite happy with their quality of life in the city of Lehi. We have seen some fluctuations over time, but in total, we have 78% of residents who currently say that they would recommend the city as a great place to live. And the average quality of life rating on a 0 to 100 scale is 75. That's pretty consistent with what we've seen over time. Overall trust and approval in elected officials has also trended downward a little bit. This, I will say, is common across many of the cities we work with up and down the Wasatch Front. I think it's more of an expression of attitude towards government in general than Lehi uniquely, but that is something that we want to keep eyes on moving forward. When we ask residents what they see as top issues or concerns in the city right now and looking towards the future, growth and the impacts of growth continue to be top of mind for residents. Infrastructure primarily. When we look at some of the direct impacts or pain points that residents are expressing, we find that rush hour traffic is becoming an increasingly large concern for residents, while road conditions are less of a concern. So definitely some clear tension there just in terms of overall capacity of Lehi City streets. Probably not a surprise to any of you. We also ask residents to evaluate a series of city services. Most of those city services tested above 50 on that 0 to 100 scale. We have 9 of our 22, so just shy of half, receiving scores above 70 on that 0 to 100 scale. And power services were added to the list this year, and residents are quite happy with the city's power provision, at a 79 out of 100. And then looking at residents' communication preferences, overall, residents are inclined towards email communication. I will say there's a little bit of a bias here because we are conducting an online survey. Residents are receiving the invitations online, so we certainly wouldn't recommend that the city move fully away from print media and other opportunities to reach out to residents, but there does seem to be an opportunity to increase the city's level of communication and connection to residents through email channels. And then some of the topics that residents are most interested in hearing about include construction or traffic updates, utility interruptions, or parks, library, arts services, and emergency alerts. A quick look at survey methodology before we get into the meat of things a little bit further. You can see here that map of resident distribution. We have a good sample of residents who responded to the survey throughout the city. They have been grouped into regions here that we've used to sort of dissect things over time. In the interest of time, I'm going to breeze past most of those comparisons, but this full presentation will be shared with all of you after this meeting, and we're, of course, happy to respond to any follow-up questions or comments. The survey this year was in the field for about a week, from January 5th to the 12th, and we had an excellent response rate for our panel refresh year. So we do a little bit of statistical overkill on years where we're looking to refresh that panel, make sure that we have a good, broad representative group of residents who are responding to this survey, so that in subsequent years we can go back to that panel and have a representative, healthy response rate continuing forward. And all of these responses have been weighted to reflect the demographics of the city as a whole in regards to age, gender, home ownership rates in the city.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question about that? Yeah. I'm just wondering about, so are the residents randomly selected? It goes to the emails. Do they have a unique code that's assigned to them so they can't then share that survey out and have it accounted?
They receive individual single-use survey links.
Okay.
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can, just a couple questions. I think the timing of this was interesting. I got some feedback from residents, especially around the elected officials part, because we had already obviously taken office. So they're confused. Are we talking about the old council? So I don't know if the timing is set, because I think this will be a recurring thing for years to come, right?
Yeah, and again, there's probably little tweaks like that we could make. It was just, we didn't send it out at Christmas time. We thought January might get a better response rate, so.
Yeah, and I guess if for the future, if we were to do it in the summer or something like that, would that maybe be more effective, just because people know their elected officials a little better at that point?
We have done it in the summer in the past, but then people don't remember their snowplow score. So we've tried to mix it up in the past, because whatever's most recent is kind of top of mind.
Okay.
So I wouldn't take it personally. I think this probably more reflects the previous officials. You guys haven't
I
really
figured.
voted on anything yet. So yeah, so I wouldn't take it too personally.
And then how are the questions organized? Is that okay?
She could probably answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll speak to a few of those points just briefly. So we have, over the past 5 years, held the survey during the same January-February window to maintain that level of consistency. Prior to that, it did sort of fluctuate when the survey was fielded. Again, keeping things sort of consistent so that we're looking at apples to apples comparisons of what was top of mind and where residents might be experiencing some pain points is really valuable. So we would discourage moving the fielding period around again without that sort of asterisk if we chose to field the survey at a different time next year. Summer happens to be a particularly difficult time to gather responses from residents. We sort of see people check out when school is out of session through much of the Wasatch Front. So we could look at a later in the spring fielding or a fall fielding period if that's helpful. As far as the organization of the questions in the survey, we start with sort of a funnel approach. So we want to ask broad questions about quality of life in the city, overall perceptions, and things like that that are pretty general before we get down to specific issue areas or service evaluations. So starting broad, getting more specific as we go, trying to avoid framing or biasing respondents in as many ways as possible.
Thank you.
Okay, so looking at some of those general questions at the top of the survey here. Overall, residents feel that the city is headed in the right direction generally. This has fluctuated a little bit over time. We saw in 2024 the most significant drop, but we are rebounding a little bit here. 68%, so just over 2/3 of residents feel the city is headed in the right direction. And again, our overall quality of life rating has remained largely stable year over year. So you can see the sort of faint dotted lines there right around 75 represent the average score over the past several years. Again, 75 on that 0 to 100 scale is a pretty positive quality of life rating, and you can see the most common responses are actually closer to that 80 or 90 range. So really positive quality of life ratings here. And when we ask residents whether they approve or disapprove of how the elected officials in the city are doing their jobs, 70% say that they approve at least at some level. Again, down slightly over time, but pretty consistent with what we're seeing in most cities up and down the Wasatch Front. And frankly, still a very positive approval rating. 2/3 of residents say that they approve, just 4% strongly approve, but I think the point is well taken that that could be a little bit of confusion following a municipal election year as well. So. The share of residents who say that the city has gotten worse over time has increased over the past several years, and this is one area where we have a little bit of cause for concern. You can see that we have 13% of residents saying that things have gotten much worse. These attitudes are pretty regionally grouped, and we see relatively stable numbers in that about the same category. When we're thinking about the overall quality of life rating that residents are expressing, and we see that average quality of life is quite stable, the interesting dynamic here is that that share of residents who say things are getting worse is just overall getting slightly larger. Where we recruited a new panel this year, we don't feel that this is representative of a specific cohort of residents. We feel that this is pretty representative of the city as a whole, so it's certainly something to keep an eye on. And when we look at the attitudes that are sort of likely to be shaping that, the things that are correlated with that movement, growth is still the #1 pain point that residents are pointing to. Overall, we have 80% of residents this year who say that the city is growing to some degree too quickly. You can see that's bounced up and down a little bit over time, but pretty consistently high share of residents feel things are outpacing the rate of infrastructure improvements and growth in the city.
Really quick,
Yes,
Mr.
sorry.
Mayor, can I ask a question? 2 slides back, you mentioned that and maybe I misunderstood, so that's why I just wanted to ask. You mentioned that maybe some of this is regionally located, but representative of not just one cohort. And I think that's maybe where I'm trying to understand. So if it's not one cohort of people, but you noticed a regional connection,
Yes.
which region was it? And could you provide? And I don't know if it's in further slides.
I was going to say, in the interest of time, have hidden the regional breakouts, so I could pull that up.
No. If you want to keep going,
that'll
that's
be-
fine, but it'll be in the
That'll
presentation.
be in the full presentation that you receive, and again, happy to address any specific follow-up questions after that.
Okay.
I think the point that I was trying to make is not that it's necessarily residential tenure question. So it does seem to be more common among residents who have lived in the city longer, but there are also some regional differences. The residents on sort of the northeast side of the city are most likely to say that things have gotten better. Residents in sort of the older parts of the city are more likely to say things have gotten worse.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
Of course. Again, growth is largely shaping those attitudes. But when we look at residents' positive evaluations, or the things that they say drive them to Lehi, the reasons that they choose to live here, central location is and has been consistently the primary driver for residents. About 45% mention something that has to do with the proximity to I-15, the accessibility of the city, the sort of central positioning between Salt Lake and Utah County or other cities in Utah County. Family-friendly environment is also a large draw for residents, as is general affordability in housing. These are things that came up relative to other places that residents may have considered living along the Wasatch Front. And then work and job opportunities and the small town feel of the city. Again, pretty consistent themes over time, but these are the things that residents are really attached to, the things that characterize Lehi in their minds. And again, coming back to those issues or concerns that residents are expressing, a majority of residents identified something that had to do with traffic or congestion when we asked what they saw as the most important issue facing the city today. Growth in infrastructure was also sort of directly related. Again, a majority of residents citing something about growth in their concerns. And then high-density housing, general affordability, and then water and resources were the other most common themes. But you can see there's quite a gap between the concerns about growth and those other concerns that residents expressed. And looking towards the future, residents identify largely the same issues as things that they would be concerned about over the next several years. So growth, again, mentioned by a majority of residents, traffic by just over a third, infrastructure by about 1 in 4 residents, and then housing and water, again, a little bit of a gap there, but rounding out the top 5 issues. All of that said, residents are still likely to recommend the city as a great place to live. So we have 78% who say that they would recommend the city to friends and family. This number has stayed consistently high despite a little bit of a decline since 2022, which never ceases to surprise me. We see a lot of attitudes in other cities where it is sort of a last in and close the door behind me sentiment when there are particular frustrations about growth or infrastructure limitations. And that doesn't seem to be the case here. We do still have a large share of residents who feel that the city is a great place to live and would recommend it to others. That sort of small town feel or sense of community really shines through in this particular area, I think. Overall, we asked residents to evaluate a few different aspects of life in the city. 91% of residents say that they feel safe living in Lehi, again, consistently high over time there. 79% say that the city is a great place to raise a family. No statistically significant differences in the scores from the last couple years there. 64% say that the city does a good job managing city services. That score has declined slightly over time, something that it's probably worth paying attention to, and we can talk about specific city service ratings there as well. But residents do feel that the city provides all of the services they think it should. 62% say that the city has all the kinds of businesses they would like it to have, and that is a statistically significant increase compared to 2025's data point there. So positive development in terms of economic growth and businesses. And then a dip again in the share of residents who agree that they trust city officials to be open and honest compared to what we saw last year. Again, this could be due to some confusion following the municipal election. It also does just sort of fit the broader narrative that we're seeing around trust in government generally up and down the Wasatch Front. Looking at residents' specific evaluations of city goals, overall residents have positive attitudes and feel that the city is doing a good job focusing on having a family-centered community and providing diverse opportunities and a high quality of life. Residents react really positively to that. 77% total say that that seems like a good direction for the city to head. And that is the largest share of residents that has expressed sort of positive evaluations or agreement with that sentiment over time. So the goal has been shifted slightly year over year. The wording has been tweaked a little bit, but this particular mission statement or direction of having a thriving family-centered community, providing diverse opportunities and a high quality of life is something that resonates with a larger share of residents than we've seen in the past. Looking at the specific points in that overall mission statement or goal, we have a total of 67% of residents who would give the city an excellent or good rating in providing a family-centric community or developing a family-centric community. Similarly, 67% in total would give the city an excellent or good rating for providing a high quality of life in the city. So really high marks there. The area where we see a little bit more division is when it comes to diverse opportunities in Lehi. So we have 47% of residents who would give the city an excellent or good rating there, but a large share of residents who would put things at fair, so maybe a little bit more opportunity for education or additional outreach when we're thinking about the types of opportunities that are available to residents, whether that's different recreation opportunities for different shares of the population, different arts and culture opportunities and events that might reach different audiences. Looking at our specific city service ratings, you can see our fire and emergency medical services stays at the top of the list here with the highest rating overall, 85 on that 0 to 100 scale. Garbage collection comes in second with 82 on that 0 to 100 scale. Again, pretty consistent hierarchy here. Power or electricity services provided by the city coming in fresh and taking our number 3 spot for the highest satisfaction rating. And then police services is right there at 78 out of 100 as well. Rounding out our top 5, we have culinary drinking water in the city at 77 on that 0 to 100 scale. You can see a lot of these ratings really positively clustered. Again, almost all of our city service ratings are above that sort of, if we were to look at it like a letter grade, we have all passing scores, certainly. But when we look at some of the lower ratings, we have development permitting at the bottom of the list here, 42 on that 0 to 100 scale. There's also a large share of residents who are declining to express rating for development permitting, and I conjecture we've sort of changed the framing or the wording for that particular department over time. At one point it was planning and zoning services, development, planning, zoning, anything that has those words in it tends to conjure attitudes about growth, frankly. So in this case, I think we've seen in the past that planning and zoning has been the scapegoat for complaints about growth in the city services section. Development permitting seems to still hold that position here.
But Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question? In the survey, are you offering an opt-out when rating these services if they've never participated in them? So theoretically, these responses should be from people who have participated in the permitting process.
Theoretically, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a not applicable option for all of the services, so residents don't have to express an evaluation if they don't have any experience with that department or service. That said, I think we have seen over time that this tends to be a little bit of an outlet for those attitudes about growth in the city. Looking at residents' attitudes toward traffic conditions, again, this is something that we know is top of mind for residents and is a particular pain point. We have a large share of residents who work outside the city, 46% this year. That's a pretty consistent split between those who work inside Lehi and those who commute out of the city. But that is certainly a factor when we're looking at those traffic concerns. And the things that are most likely to be considerable concerns or pain points for residents are evening and morning traffic on those major thoroughfares. So 45% of residents say that it is a major or significant concern to them, or it affects them personally. When we're looking at evening traffic, morning traffic on those major thoroughfares, slightly less of a major impact on residents, but still we're looking at more than a third who say that that is a pain point for them. It directly impacts them. And then about 1 in 4 residents who say that evening traffic on freeway exits and on-ramps or morning traffic on freeway exits and on-ramps are particular pain points for them. When we're looking at daytime traffic, we see significantly fewer concerns or direct impacts to residents, and traffic in residential areas is slightly less of a concern than, again, those sort of major commuting pain points. We also asked residents whether the conditions on these different roads and access points are having a direct impact on them, and we see a pretty substantial share, about 1 in 5 residents say that the road conditions on major thoroughfares directly affect them, but significantly fewer residents say that the road conditions in residential areas or on freeway exits or on-ramps have affected them directly in the past year. And you can see those ratings have fluctuated a little bit. So last year we had a consistent 16% of residents who said that residential area road conditions were affecting them directly, but that's down pretty substantially from 2023 when that was a larger pain point. Major thoroughfares are a larger pain point now than they have been in the past, and those freeway exits and on-ramps have sort of bounced around a little bit, but 14% of residents say that that has a direct impact on them this year. And then a few other potential traffic impacts or transportation considerations. 27% of residents this year say that the accessibility of mass transit has an extreme or major impact on them directly. So it's something that a larger share of residents than ever before say is affecting them. We also have about 1 in 4 residents who say that the accessibility of safe walking routes is something that affects them personally. Bike lanes are the least common concern for residents overall. And the last section that we'll delve into here is just looking at residents' preferences for information and communication from the city. Overall, we have the largest share of residents sort of coalescing on one channel, saying that they currently get most of their information from the city through social media. The city newsletter and word of mouth are the next most common information sources, followed by emails from the city. When we look at the channels that residents would prefer to use, we do have a larger share of residents, again, who participated in an online survey, saying that an email from the city would be their preferred mode of contact. But we find that the city newsletter is sort of meeting the needs of those who would prefer to use it. We have a good amount of parity there. A smaller share of residents would prefer to rely on word of mouth than currently do. So again, some opportunity to redirect attention to some of the more city official channels. And then social media as well. Still a large cohort of residents who would prefer to stay on that channel and continue to receive communication or information from the city that way. Some of the topics that residents find particularly valuable. Majority of residents say that updates about road construction, traffic, and infrastructure projects are useful to them. Utility and service interruptions, parks, recreation, library services, arts and culture opportunities in the city, and emergency alerts and public safety notices, sort of rounding out that top tier of notifications or types of communication that residents find especially valuable. City events and community programs, land use development and planning zoning notices are the next most common. After that, we do sort of dip into a smaller share of residents with a longer tail of issues here. But budget, taxes, fees, and capital projects, neighborhood-specific updates, elections and voter information, and city council meeting agendas, decisions, and public hearing notifications are important to about 1 in 4 residents, respectively. And when we look at the channels of communication that might best serve each of these needs, again, email sort of topping the list across the board here, whether it's traffic and construction or political updates or development projects, residents find email to be a particularly useful channel for these updates. Text alerts for infrastructure and road project notices would be especially welcome. while the city newsletter seems to be a better channel for political updates, whether that's council decisions or hearings, development projects going forward, and some of those community events. Overall, we have a pretty consistent share of residents who would like to receive some degree more communication from the city. So just shy of 2/3 of residents would like to see a lot or a little bit more information through the city, again, through some of those channels specifically. And when we look at the ways that residents say the city could improve communication, looking at multi-platform options, so seeing reach to different demographics and parts of the city by utilizing those text alerts and emails and social media. I think this is something that, again, represents more of an opportunity for education and outreach to residents than a particular need that the city isn't addressing. The level of awareness there is obviously going to be pretty important when we're looking at how effectively we're reaching residents through those various channels. We do have a large share of residents, just over 1 in 4, who say that email communication could be better utilized, more social media engagement, timely information, and then detailed and transparent communication were the other common themes that we saw in those responses about how communication might be improved. We also asked a series of questions about the Everbridge alert system. We have about 49% of residents who say that that's their preferred avenue for receiving emergency alerts. Just over 1/3 of residents say that they have signed up. And when we ask residents who haven't signed up for those alerts why not, what we see is that there's a large lack of awareness there. 8 out of 10 residents say that they had never heard of this system. So definitely an opportunity to increase awareness and engagement there. And then about 1 in 4 residents say that they're not sure how to sign up. So again, certainly an education opportunity. And that concludes our brief review. Again, there's more detail in the slides that we can send around after this meeting, but based on what we've covered here, any additional questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So I think it is good to do it in January, especially as it kind of maybe helps us make some decisions budget-wise and what's priority. I'm kind of wondering again, along Councilmember Harrison's question, is when was this scheduled to be? Like, when did the previous council make a decision to send this out? Is it just like standard? It's just that time?
Okay. The staff would make the decision when to send it out. The council.
Okay.
Yeah, we just try and get it ahead of the budget retreat.
Okay. Just with 3 new council members and 4 really, with 4 new council members. And I think all of us who were in the election last year, this really just validates what we were all hearing from residents. So anyways, and I don't know, probably not going to say what the cost of this is, but to me it is kind of unfortunate that it was, and it's not you, but just overall statement that this was done with all these new council members here, and it's confusing whether it was reflecting the previous council, the current council, and with all that, and especially, I mean, most of us talk with thousands of residents, so this is confirming what we were told.
And if I may, and I don't want to downplay your concern, but really that's 1 or 2 questions out of many, right? We're trying to get a rating on how the city services at large are doing, not necessarily how the elected officials are performing. So I validate your concern, certainly, but I think we still get a lot of value out of doing the survey when we did out ahead of the budget retreat. So that's really the long and short of it. It's not your report card. I hope you don't take it that way. It's more our report card, if you will.
Yeah, no, I don't take it personally. I'm just considering cost and the residents, you know.
Yeah, and I guess help me understand that concern. I don't understand the cost being a concern.
Well,
doing
if
it in
it's
January.
not completely accurate because we have this transition period,
Sure.
you know, I would like to get the best bang for our buck if we're spending the money on it. Just like how the ratings went down after the election 2 years ago, probably reflective of that election. You know, that's just something to think about when we have a municipal election, when there's especially a large overturn.
Sure. I just don't want the perception to be that we wasted money on the survey, because certainly we got a lot of valuable information out of it, but certainly to the point of the elected officials, perhaps another timing in the year would be better.
I think part of it to look at too, that so little of it is about who's in office right now. You're seeing consistency of no matter who's in office, it's the same kind of concerns that are consistent over time. We're seeing those things. Maybe there's a lack of being able to address the amount that the city can actually influence and impact those areas. So maybe those kind of things are handled. But I think for the most part, some of these things like public safety, those are things that we need to know. What is the residents? How do they feel towards public safety? That really has little to do with, who just was elected. I think those things are really key when we go into budget. And some of these other things probably can't really be impacted because, the officials are the officials. That's who's been elected. But these other parts with what departments are doing well, where can we improve communication, that's a lot to do with kind of how this council now is going to drive decisions that if we didn't have this data, we may not be making it. We'll just, kind of shoot from the hip. So I would agree with Jason on that. Like, take anything when it comes to that might be a reflection of council with a grain of salt and focus on the other parts of it.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. I'll throw one comment there. I know I got mine on the 6th right after I was sworn in, so I spoke very highly of this city. So we can throw one of the however many there was out. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time.
I think data is good. Any data in versus data out helps us. I think we can be aware of those things, though, in the next coming couple years as they come up. Maybe to offset that a week or two, but it's good information. Item number 3.1, Police Department staffing discussion. Chief Paul, turn some time over to you.
Thank you. I want to thank the mayor and council for taking the time to let us come and have a short discussion on police staffing in preparation of going into the budget season. And I will say the surveys are valuable for us because it looks like what's on everybody's mind is kind of what's on our mind, and that's growth and traffic, which are really the two biggest drivers for us and the needs that we have right now. Many of you got the growth analysis, the staffing study that we used last year. I know all of you did. I sent it out recently. And I know there were some questions about that. We are using the same study this year to reevaluate where we're at now. And the advantage is it'll give us last year's data plus this year's data. Unfortunately, I can't give you any hard results right now because we're still vetting the information and we're going through and finding that. We did get your email that outlined some of your concerns and the questions that you wanted to address, and those are the things that we're also trying to address right now. But just out of wanting to be as completely accurate as we can be, we don't really have any hard data right now to report, but we're happy to answer any questions relative to the study and maybe talk that way. And I also want to thank Mariah while I'm up here because Mariah has spent a lot of time going through our data and sifting through a lot of stuff to get the most accurate information. And she may be in a better position to explain the methodology, but I'm happy to address any questions you have right now or talk about that.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may. Yeah. Well, thank you, Chief. I had a really good experience during the ride-along a couple weeks ago from about 7 p.m. until midnight. Just thoroughly impressed with your officers, and so thank you for that opportunity. I know Councilmember Stallings had a very similar experience. So the one thing that sticks out to me, and I appreciate the studies that you sent, especially the one specific to Lehi around the peak workload analysis. And it talks a lot about the saturation index, which for those who haven't seen this study, it's basically wanting 60% of the time that an officer's on duty to respond to calls and so forth, with the other 40% being discretionary, so they can proactively patrol and be available. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. This study says that 60% of the officer's time should be committed and 40% should be discretionary, or It could be that they're in court or they're in training or they're on vacation and they're simply not available for calls. So that, yeah, the study says that, and moreover, it says 60% of your total sworn officers should be dedicated to the patrol division, where that's your most calls for emergency response and, those immediate calls for service. And I can report that 60% of our workforce is in the patrol division, 62% right now. So we're very good there. The other side of it, the discretionary time and the saturation stuff that you're talking about are the things that we're still trying to analyze based on new data from, even changes from last budget to this budget. So.
Okay, and the one, I really like the study because it goes through the 24 hours in a day, starting at midnight. And out of those 24 hours of needed staffing versus current staffing, there are 2 hours, so at 12 a.m. and 4 a.m. we're right on par, right? I think there's 1 hour at 6 a.m. where we have an extra officer. But every other hour, so the remaining 21 hours, we have anywhere from needing an additional 1 officer to meet that good point of staffing to, I think the most was at 8 p.m., 22 officers understaffed. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's what the study shows, and that's quite concerning, and that's the stuff we're trying to address. And I guess our hope, and my hope specifically, is that through this analysis, it's very likely a bigger number than we can make up.